Hi, my name is Jean Valonis, and I think we'll get started here. There's a whole bunch of seats here in the front if you want to come up and sit with us. Welcome to Secrets from Admins to Level Up Your Developer Careers. This is what happens when an admin, an admineloper, and a developer get together, probably over some drinks. I think you've probably seen this enough times today, but don't make any purchasing decisions based on the things we tell you, because that would be not a good idea. Again, my name is Jean Valonis. I am addicted to Salesforce. I've been in the Salesforce industry for 12 years, and I'm 6 times certified, or 5 times certified. I added one for myself.
Oh, well
Look
done,
at that.
well done.
I'm 5. I got 5. Working on the 6th. I currently work at an American Express as a manager of product development, and I actually started out as an accidental admin, routing leads and running reports for a marketing team. So I'm super excited to have you all here, and I'll be your admin storyteller today.
I guess that would make me the Admineloper storyteller today.
Say that 5 times fast.
My name is Leslie Gastautis, and I'm going to say it again because we keep practicing. Admineloper is a relatively new term that Celeste Keller put on a blog, I think about a year ago. And it really means someone who is responsible for both sides, is aware of both sides. At this point, it's folks primarily that came from the admin declarative side and are learning code or that starting to integrate that into their job responsibilities. And I'm doing that now thanks to people like David Liu and Rad Women Who Code. We'll talk a little more about that. I've got 6 certifications, but one's going to disappear in December.
Got to do that transition, right?
And I'm really glad to be here day 2. This is the second time we've gotten to offer this, and we are without high heels today because it's day 2 of Dreamforce.
We learned our lesson.
Point that out.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Megan Brodke. I started working with Salesforce about a decade ago, back when it was Salesforce.com is the big name with the red S. I started as a customer success manager working for Salesforce. Eventually, I became an administrator. Then I became a developer, and now I'm a technical architect with Sunreach Consulting. And I am going to be your developer storyteller today.
Cool. So that's the very short version of who we are, but I'd like to ask a little about who's here in the room with us. By a show of hands, how many of you identify as or call yourself a developer in the room? Okay, thank you. And how many of you would call yourself an administrator for Salesforce? Okay,
Oh, you're outnumbered.
It's a little scary. And how many of you would call yourself like other, but right, or both, right? Both hands. So I've got a question for all of you with all of the roles that you play. In your org, who is the one that's responsible when something breaks? Okay. So if you didn't raise your hand, you're in denial. And we won't be able to help you in this session, but we might do another one in the future. And you also might be somebody that hates to raise their hand when somebody in a seminar asks you to raise your hand, and that's fair as well. I say that because all of us share a common interest and responsibility and good feels, hashtag good feels, about what it means to us to be working in the platform, how we're trying to serve the business, get that cool solution, get to the end and everybody wins. And it's very challenging. And we all share that. And I want to recognize that everyone here is part of that very real Ohana. So in our Ohana journey, the 3 of us showed up at the 2nd Trailhead DX event earlier this year, which is developer-ease. It's this developer-esque smaller conference that Salesforce has been doing. And I had met you in February at Tahoe, or Tahoe Dreamin', another user group event. And we only knew each other on the Twitters or...
Through the Twitters, yeah, online.
And did you know?
Through the Twitters.
Yeah,
through the
user group leaders.
All the Twitters.
So we're all there at the same time. It's a very geeky experience, and there might have been a little bit of alcohol involved.
I think there was more than a little. What stays at Trailhead X happens, stays there.
Stays at Trailhead X, yes. So we got talking and geeking and giving opinions about what we thought about what was being presented. and whether or not we thought it was helpful. And we also started sharing what might be termed war stories about experiences that we've had in our careers. And we thought it was a major light bulb moment to say, hey, we should do a presentation. We should tell people these stories. It might help, particularly for folks who might not have had these experiences before. So Salesforce was nice enough to accept our proposal to come and tell you these stories. And we feel like we've picked out the best ones that will be of most assistance to you, whether you're an admin or an other or a developer or an Admineloper, whatever you call yourselves. Hopefully these stories will really give you some points that can help you solve situations and problems and avoid miscommunication, which we'll find will be a bit of a theme. So let's get started with Megan, developer, because it's the developer track, so developer should start.
All right, so my story is based around watch your language and use your eyes. So this story starts where I had gone to a client site. I was sitting there with the sales guy and my business analyst, and then I was also sitting with the business from the client. And we were all sitting in a room. We had just finished UAT. And we were going over the changes that they wanted to have, because apparently, like every client, they didn't bother to look at any of the demos we had done throughout the entire time for every sprint we did. They just decided, let's wait till the end of UAT to actually look at the work. So here we are in the room, and we're going through, and one of the people from the client side brings up a change they wanted to make to the community. Well, we could totally do it. I personally, though, rather than thinking about my audience, decided to start rambling on about how we could do this. And I started going on and on, talking faster than fast about how we can totally use a custom setting so that an admin would be able to control it and everything's gonna be totally fine. And I started going into the code. And it was a moment. It was a moment. I looked around the room and everyone was just staring at me. I totally lost them. Nobody had any idea what I was talking about. Nobody really cared. They just wanted to know we could do it. Well, later I got back from the client visit and I got to have a lovely discussion with my boss and then my VP about this great experience in front of the client, because they were not so happy about my little rant about how we could do it, because I wasn't paying attention to my audience, and that was something that I desperately needed to start doing and be more cautious of. So, next slide. Watch your language and use your eyes. Know your audience. Just because you have an admin that's been working in Salesforce or a business user that's using Salesforce that you're working with doesn't mean they've ever actually used Salesforce or they know what you're talking about. Doesn't mean that anybody needs the details of your code. Just because you know it doesn't mean everybody needs to know it. And keeping that in mind when you're talking to people, this is very important, so that you don't end up sitting there and making yourself look a little ridiculous in front of not only your team, but also in front of the client. It's totally okay to say, I don't understand. Salesforce is huge. Just going to the help and training website can be overwhelming when you're trying to find something. Try searching for something there, and all of a sudden you see that there's link after link after link, and there are all the other additional resources. There's a lot to know. Nobody can know everything. It's totally fine to point out that you don't understand what somebody's asking you or you don't know what they're saying. It happens. It's normal. Nobody knows it all. And then body language and facial expressions. If I would have, instead of sitting there and thinking about it and rambling on and on, instead of everyone in that room about how we could actually do it, I would have looked around and saw how uncomfortable I was making everyone in the middle of my rant. Probably could have stopped myself from having to go to not only my boss, but my VP to hear about it. That blank stare means you lost to them. So just pay attention. Use the same terminology that they're using when they're talking about things. Just because you've learned different words and that's the wording that you're used to, if your client or the business is using different terminology, adapt what you say to match with them so that they're going to be able to follow what you're talking about.
That's super smart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the little things. It's the little things.
Okay. I really respect developers. I respected them to the point of probably applying godlike powers when I was in my early admin years. So my story is about cars to start with. I thought of developers more like car mechanics because I know nothing really about cars except how to drive one. And I have this expectation that when I have a car and it's making a funny sound, I will take it to the certified mechanic in the mechanic place where the cars, where they call the place with the
garage.
Thank you. The garage. And they'll fix the computer chip, they know the tire pressure, they know the exhaust and the ignition, and I know enough jargon to get myself into trouble, but of course they would know the difference. I don't know about cars. And I thought, well, I take my car in, I drop it off, they fix it, they give it back, it's fine. Salesforce is the same way. It's made of code. Developers write code. If I show someone my Salesforce org and give them a login, they should just be able to go in and go, aha, I know, I see, it is evident to me. So it's not how, so just to start, that is not how it works, in case you don't know that yet.
That is definitely not how it works.
That is not at all how it works.
I learned this the hard way at my first Dreamforce. I was a very excited new solo administrator for a company that had global sales teams, and I had been with them for a week. And I came to Dreamforce, and it was super neat and very exciting, and my phone rang because the UK suddenly could not create an opportunity. That's a problem for a sales organization. And then New York, and then Chicago, and then San Francisco, and then Hong Kong. So this was pervasive. It was literally as close to an actual Salesforce is down situation, and I knew nothing about their org, and it was terrifying. So I called Salesforce support. We quickly somehow managed to get them up and running again, but when I went back home, it took 4 weeks to find out what had happened. I'll skip to the end a little here because the developer minds, I know you're like, oh, what happened? One of the dozen or so people with system administrator permissions, in the absence of having an admin, a marketer, had called support and asked for a report. And support had said, not a problem, we can do this, we just need to do a little automation in the background. Do we have your permission to do this? And he said, well, yes, you have my permission. He didn't know about sandboxes, he didn't know any of this. All they did was put a checkbox in a validation rule, and it broke the platform. And this was not a wildly heavy, complex platform. So it was pretty intense. But when I went home, the thing that took particularly long was I was having these very frustrating, for me, conversations with developers, and probably very frustrating for them, because I had this expectation that they could just go, you know, oh, I'm talking to a developer, just do the thing, just tell me why. And it turned out it wasn't necessarily a code problem, even though the validation rule was breaking the little bit of code. So good clickety click, thank you, okay. You will definitely run into, as developers, people like me who may have this idea about how you work in the platform or what you know about any given platform. So I just want to let you know it's out there, and don't be shocked if someone makes that expectation in a conversation with you. They may not even know, I didn't know for at least the first couple of years I was an admin, and I didn't really understand how anything that I build declaratively can break a platform with even the tiniest bit of code in it. And I say break a platform, but you know, I'm overstating for dramatic purposes, but it can really stop processes, right? And truly, developers know that it doesn't even have to be automation depending on the code that's in there. It could actually be adding a field or even a pick list value. So that's unique to the Salesforce platform, that people who don't code can hurt code. And not all admins know that. The developer that came to my rescue that I managed to figure this out with was the one that was so patient and talked me through and asked me my experience, what I understood, what had I done to date to try to solve this problem. Took the time to just slow down and not jump to a solution as I was demanding of them, but help take me back a step and walk through the whole thing. How about you, Jean? What do you got?
I got something fun for you. I have a little org of horrors. How many of you have an org of horrors, maybe? It's a couple of you? Yeah, it's painful. So I was blessed at a company that I worked for a couple years back to have a full team, a product team of developers and a product owner and a co-admin. So I was super excited to work with these people because I'd been a solo admin for so many years. And when I got in there, I took over the Service Cloud for them, and I soon found that maybe they didn't know all the super awesome things that Salesforce can do natively, right? Hence the org of hoarders. So I would sit every Friday with the agents just to see how they're working, network with them, understand their business processes, and they came to me with this visual force page within an account. And it was super frustrating for them and painful because they couldn't make any updates to it. It was populated through an API from another system. They couldn't roll reporting on it, and they couldn't search on the information within Salesforce. So that was kind of really painful for them. And I went to the developer and said, hey, we've got this problem, and I just want to find out why this is the way that it is. Let's play 20 questions of why. So he humored me, like a nice dev that he is. And we went through of like, hey, it's related to this junction object. And I was like, it's a visual force page populating information from a junction object? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, where's the related list? And he's like, a what? Got it. He just didn't know. And that's all. You know, it was easy for him to take this and do a visual force page, put it on the account. And he just didn't know. Super easy to fix, right? One sprint, no problem. Went in, took the visual force page off, put in the related list, added the fields that were important. Now they can edit. Now they can see the related list on both objects. Awesome. They can also search. Super awesome. Didn't really have to do anything extra. Created a custom report, and now they can pull all the reports that they want to their little heart's content. They will stay within Salesforce, and they don't go back to that other object. Hello. Salesforce support. So, what did we learn? Keep it simple and tame that org of horrors. Don't overcomplicate things for yourself. If you don't need to use code, you don't have to. There are a ton of things you can do with that point and click, and then add code. I sit with my tech team where I work now, and I am overjoyed when they ask me questions that are declarative related if they don't know, or hey, does Salesforce have something? Right? I love when they ask me questions. It makes my day. I will unplug from what I'm doing and take the time to sit there and talk through anything that they want to talk through. And I tell them, I'm like, dude, you can talk nerdy to me. If I don't understand, I'll tell you, hey, I don't understand that. Let's dig deeper. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Leslie. I think you have an alien you wanted to talk about?
So this isn't so much a car story as an alien story. I was assigned to work with a client that just had a simple implementation, shortly before. And all I needed to do is go in and do some validation rules, some automation, and help them with adoption. This was their first Salesforce org, and they had an administrator who was just half-time. She was an accidental admin, which I don't think is a bad term, by the way. It's okay. And was learning and very excited and very motivated. Awesome, great to work with. So I go in and I'm kind of digging around doing the usual, and I see that for this simple implementation, their org has 42% test code coverage. Now, for those of you who may not know, right, some of you know, right, that's bad, if you didn't know from the in the room, because the absolute minimum requirement for many, many things in Salesforce is 75%. Yeah, you should tattoo it on the inside of your eyeballs if you haven't already.
We like 100.
Okay,
but
yeah,
we'll take 75.
We want 100% test code coverage, but without at least 75%, one of the things you cannot do is you can't use a sandbox, do some work in there, and then use the Salesforce tool to push those changes from the sandbox into production. And this was a situation, they didn't have developers on staff, and to date, they had been building everything in production. Also no, don't build in production. So I needed to
Never
help.
build in production.
Never build
I'm
in
sorry,
production.
never build in production.
Yeah, never. That's not don't. It is never. So I went to go, what's happening? Why have we got such low coverage? And there were 3 packages left behind, big ones, from the implementation team. Went back to the client, said, gee, what is this? Oh, yeah. There was this thing that we thought we wanted at the beginning, and they built it for us, but then when they demoed it, we were like, nah, not so much, just turn it off. And they told us that it was off. Well, it was still obviously affecting their test code coverage, and it was 3 packages that related to each other in such a way that you could not uninstall any one of them because any one of them related to the other 2, so it was completely embedded in their platform. And this client had a sense of humor, not all of them do, but we used to call it the alien because it was like with the thing down the throat and like the thing on the face. And if you didn't know, this is the international symbol for the alien.
For the alien, yeah.
And you could not remove it without like killing the patient, basically. So I found a good developer. By that time, I'd made some developer friends, and I didn't treat them like car mechanics, and we were getting along better. And he did the surgery. He took all the parts off. It took a very long time, and it was very complicated work for a simple implementation. So, clicky thingy, thank you, ma'am.
The patient survived.
The patient lived, yes. I'm glad people enjoy this. Lesson learned. You got to think about the future no matter where you are in Salesforce. Now, I think Parker Harris has credit. You told me it was Parker that said, basically in 3 years, everything you've done is obsolete. Not that it's bad what you did, but the business keeps changing. Salesforce is a very flexible platform. The solution that you built, you're probably going to need to modify or rebuild or do something in as little as 2 to 3 years. So that's a constant cycle, but there are ways to leave real trails of destruction for the people who come after you or maintain it that are not responsible. And you really, please think about who is coming in after you. Can they maintain what you did? Does it make sense? Never leave them without at least 75% code coverage, because it really cripples the organization at the most declarative of levels. And I also learned for developers that are thinking about what they want to focus on for their career, what they want to be known for, there's some real hotshots out there that are only CSI diagnostic. They're really focusing on that because there's a lot of work because of that 2 to 3 year. What was in vogue a little while ago now has a better design pattern. Or maybe you didn't know the design pattern when you built it and someone else comes along and they do. So it's quite a career opportunity. There's plenty of opportunity for developers in this market, but it's a nice niche to be in, and you really become a go-to. The user group that I'm a member of was the one that told me about my Fix-It developer, because that developer had become the go-to for the user group as a whole. So that's an incredible opportunity.
All right, it's back to me. I have a fun story of hard coding the hard way. I'm a little anxious. I'm an anxious person. And I'm on a channel where if there's a severity 1, I'm on that page. How many here know what a severity 1 page is? A couple of you? All right, I'll explain. When Salesforce goes down, that's a severity 1 page, and they come to the admin. And it doesn't matter if it's Salesforce is down, it's whatever's connected to Salesforce. If that goes down, Salesforce is down, right? All right, well, I go to trust.salesforce.com and find Salesforce is not down. It very rarely goes down in my expertise. And what happened was we were connected to our public site at this company, and the site was down on a very specific page that was connected to Salesforce. I had great knowledge of the org, fortunately, and knew what was populated on that page, and it was connected to public articles in our knowledge base in Salesforce. So I quickly found the UX developer and said, hey, I know this is connected. How's it connected? And it's down. Let's figure this out real quick. So we jump on a laptop together, and she brings up the code, and I get a long list, I'm not tall enough, of Salesforce IDs, hard-coded right into the website. I was like, oh.
I love the sound effects. It's great.
Like I said, I'm an anxious person. So, in my long line, I know that I can take that ID and I can cut and paste it into Salesforce and figure out what that ID belongs to. Megan's informed me that the 3 digits before tell me what object that is. Would have loved to know that. Yeah. So, still learning after 12 years. So 27 knowledge articles later, I found one in draft. The article manager had gone in, started doing a new version of it, left it in draft, and went to lunch. All right, perfect. I can take the last version that she had and republish it, and voila, the website's back up. Literally only down for maybe 20 minutes. So it was super fast for me to fix because I had knowledge of the org and knew what was connected where. Fantastic. We have a bigger problem. I need that website to never go down because that's our public website. And how do we fix that, right? So my lesson learned from this is that anything that touches your org, somebody, if it's hard-coded, can mess that up. It can be a user, it can be your admin, it could be your article manager, it could be a developer, right? So I wanted to take it easy, and I wanted to do it an easy way that was easy for myself and a developer to make sure we know what's going on in the org. I asked her, I said, hey, can we put some comments in your code so that I know what articles are what? And can we pretty please take those Salesforce IDs out of there and figure out a better way? It took us a couple months to figure out a better way, but I finally convinced them to use native Salesforce. What works really well with Salesforce? Other Salesforce, right? So doing a public community, hooking that up to our website and publishing the public knowledge articles through that, that's easy. That's a no-brainer. There's no code or very little to connect it out there, and it's all native Salesforce, which I know how to do. Awesome. So I try and tell myself when these things happen to keep calm, it's just code, and we'll figure it out. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Megan, and she's going to tell us how to make our code admin friendly.
Awesome. So the story that I'm going to tell you goes back to when I was, before I was actually a developer, when I was an administrator. I was working for a company that was growing astronomically. We had just written custom software into Salesforce that one of our lovely operations guys wrote because I didn't have a dev on my team. So we had him come in, and it was in charge of commissions and quotas. Great. This seems so easy. Commission, quota. Like, this makes easy peasy. Well, as businesses change when they're growing, we'd gone from about 50 to 1,500 people in 3 years, so you can imagine there was a lot of growth going on. Things started to change like every quarter for how commissions needed to be done. And these commissions were tied to the roles of the users, and I didn't have that dev on my team, so every time I needed to make a change, I had to go to my boss and be like, okay, can we get that guy from operations to come back and make changes to the code again so that we can do this? And I hated doing it. First of all, we were making a product, which meant the operations team really didn't want to give us the hours anyway, so it was some guy doing overtime to help me. And on top of that, there had to be an easier way to do this, besides having this guy go in and manually change his code every single time. Well, I decided I'm going to start looking into this. And I used that crazy help and training site, and then I decided to go in the Twitter sphere, and then I went to the success community. And eventually I heard about this thing called list custom settings. I didn't know what they were, but I found out about them. And so I decided to write a ticket for my dev that said, change commission and quota software to use custom settings so that I can change it with like data. And that's pretty much all the ticket said. And so, of course, like 15 minutes later, I get this phone call from the guy in operations. He's like, what did you write in this ticket? What are you talking about? And I'm like, okay, so I found out about this thing from the community that's called custom settings, where like, I can just change data and you don't have to do this code changey thing. And he's like, how often is this commission structure gonna be changing? And I'm just like, every single quarter till the end of time. And like, he's like, okay, like I can see why you want to have this not have to have me update this, and I'm pretty sure his wife would really appreciate that, and his children as well. So he was like, you need to write tickets that make more sense, for one, and second of all, yeah, we can do this. So he sat down with me, he went over what custom settings were, and I was like, awesome, this is fabulous. Now I had a way that I was able to make all these changes all by myself, and I didn't need to call a developer anymore. I was so excited. I was reaching out. I told the Ohana thank you. I was so excited. I was like, way to tell me about something I didn't know what I was talking about, so I might have got all my stuff fixed. It was awesome. And there are plenty of other ways to make your code admin friendly. If you're working with Visual Force, use field sets. They are awesome. They are a great way for admins to be able to create the fields that they're creating on a regular basis and then add them to the page without having to call it a developer. There is nothing worse than getting the tickets that are like, oh, we just made a new field. Can you go in and like find some time in your day to now go in and update a page because we have one new field and you have all the time in the world. Second, custom settings. List custom settings are great. They're awesome to be able to use in code. Hierarchy custom settings are awesome for validation rules. They're a great way that you're able to exclude people from validation rules. You can reference them by profile or by user and to have people excluded. And it's just an awesome way to just work with data to have your code do stuff. And then custom metadata types. If you aren't working with IDs, you may as well go with a custom metadata type as an alternative to a list custom setting. They're totally deployable. I mean, because does anyone really like to sit there and have the extra task of now we have to load the data into every single org when you have the client that has the 5 orgs you have to go through to get to production, and it's like, now I have to do it again. Now I have to do it again. So use custom metadata types. They're fabulous, and they can save you so much time, and they can make your admins so much happier and their days so much easier because they don't have to call you, and you don't have to do all of those minor tasks for them. So, brilliant takeaways. Communication is the ballgame, folks. Admins and devs are partners, talking to each other, telling each other what you need while you're doing things. That is the key. Leave a clean trail. Leave comments in code. Make sure that you are not leaving packages that you are no longer leaving in orgs, yes, especially that are tied together and make people do alien signs.
It's like
this.
Yeah.
Okay. Alien signs. Yeah. Think about the future. Who actually has to maintain this? If you're working with a client that doesn't have a developer on site, is it something that you can do with Process Builder and Flow so that they can maintain it rather than writing a bunch of code that they're going to have to call you for every time they need to change? And again, it is totally okay to say, I don't understand you. People have to say it all the time. I say it frequently. I don't always know what people are talking about. I don't know how to do everything. That's normal. It's totally fine to say it.
The smartest people I know are the ones that say that all the time.
Yeah.
They have no problem with that.
I mean, it's one of those things. You can't know everything. Life goes on. Nobody's going to get mad at you for not knowing. And if you don't know the why, if you have a ticket and you don't know why you're actually doing that task, you are in so much trouble. Oh my God. If you don't know the why, then go and find the person that made it and find out what the purpose is of the ticket. Why do you want to do this task this way? Because there are so many different ways to do things in Salesforce, either with built-in functionality, declaratively, using custom code. Knowing why is super important.
So we put up some resources up here for you. Hopefully you know what a trail mix is. If you don't, they're really awesome. Out in Trailhead, you can go out and put together different modules and make different trail mixes to share with your friends and family. I put together this Admin 201 that I love when my devs go through so they can learn the basics of what declaratively is out there. And Megan put together a community quick start for all of the community information that's out there that people can go through and do the trail mixes. We love our Ohana, and going to your local user group, I don't know how many times they have saved me or helped me with questions that maybe I didn't feel safe asking somebody at work, but I definitely felt safe with my user group. So if you have one in your area, which I'm pretty sure you do, I think there's 173 of them now, find them, ask your questions. And Leslie's going to tell us a little bit about Rad Women. It's a group out in Ohana that you've actually participated in.
Yeah, so Rad Women Who Code has been a massive life changer for me. It's all volunteer. 4 women in the Salesforce ecosystem got together and started putting together a curriculum. It's a 10-week course, and it's challenging. And they volunteer all their time to teach women admins how to get into code. It's an introductory course. They are putting together an intermediate and advanced course as well. It's had a huge impact. More women are interested in it than there are slots for them to be available to teach. Right now it is done by lottery, but they're trying to add more teachers all the time. We've got some guy allies that also are teachers or coaches to help respond to the interest. But I have the interesting to me situation where I took this course, I won the lottery, I took it 2 years ago, and I just finished my first 10 weeks as a coach for Rad Women, which that blows my mind still, but it's more of a, hey, you know, if I can get that far down the road, I feel good for everyone else. I've got stickers, I've got some stuff if you want Rad Women stuff. All of these links will be live when we post in the agenda builder after Dreamforce. There's a little more information here for you.
There's some badges. If you know Trailhead, go out, check out the badges out there. And in lieu of time, I'll skip it. And if any of you all have questions, there's a mic up here. Come ask your questions, and we're more than happy to spend the last 5-ish minutes answering anything you have questions about. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you.
We appreciate you for coming.